Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here. As always, let's jump straight into the content, and this is filmed on the early access server. Thank you so much to Hoivers for letting us use the creator experience server as well. Now, the most important thing that you need to know is, unlike some characters in the game, for example, Ranmei, who has very specific turn requirements, energy requirements, and even characters like Bronyer, who maybe do need a little bit more skill points to get going, Sunday is insane because he neither cares too much about energy nor skill points in his build, and you will see it reflecting in the entirety of this thing. But let's get into the first thing is understanding his kit. Why does he not have the downsides of both Bronyer as well as Ranmei? Now, firstly, his ultimate ability has a 130 energy burst cost, similar to Ranmei, but unlike Ranmei, who only wants to use like her skill once and then not use it and basic so that she's skill point positive, Sunday wants to use his skill as much as he can, because after he uses it out, he gives like massive amounts of damage for 3 turns. He wants the 3 turn rotation similarly, but he can spam his skill 3 times very easily to get the 130 energy up for his ultimate ability, so he doesn't really have too much energy requirements. At the same time, if you keep buffing and pushing the person you have used your ultimate on, you'll get your skill points back. Over here, you see this second paragraph. After using skill on the person you ulted, recover 1 skill point, making him able to use 3 skills on the same target with 0 skill point cost. That is ridiculously insane, and at the same time getting tons of energy, because when you use skill, you get more energy back for the character as well, allowing you both to have a lot of buffing on the character, continuously push that same character, and also have a lot of uptime on this character, meaning that you don't really need to care too much about gear, but there is still a catch. I'll explain it in a little bit as well. Now, first thing, that is what we covered in terms of skill and ultimate ability. For his talent ability, it's just generally a lot of crit rate that he buffs. The main thing about this character that you need to know is slightly different from characters like Bronyer, other than the skill point requirement, is he is a specialist at buffing a summon type unit. If you look at his skill over here, when you use the skill on a particular target, both the character and their summon immediately take action. Of course, if you cast this skill on a Harmony character, you can't push the Harmony character forward, because this will give you like some sort of like infinite loop where you can just like funnel free skill points together with like Bronyer buffing Sunday buffing Bronyer buffing Sparkle, and then you get the infinite skill points, infinite abilities as well, energy as well, which is not what the game wants. That's why they put in that part over here in this last section where you can't have the Harmony characters move. So other than that, how does this then implicate his builds and team compositions? First of all, his builds are super generalistic. I'll talk about the signature Lightcone in a little bit, but what are some other options that you can use? One of them is going to be, but the battle isn't over. This is Bronyer's signature. It gives you the energy that you need to help him complete his 3-turn rotation, and basically almost like every 6 turns or like 2 users of his ultimate, because his ultimates last 3 turns each. So it's after 6 Sunday turns, you will get 1 skill point, which makes him a slightly positive in terms of skill point, because he gets a lot of refund when you use your skill on the unit that you have beatified, which is ultimate buff ability. This is fantastic, and when you use the skill, the next ally taking action deals 30% more damage. This is really solid. If you don't have this, you can pick this up in the shop. I find it really, really good. Probably the best non-signature for him. I'll talk about his signature, why is it so good in a little bit. But 6 Sunday turns, 1 free skill point, and you get a lot of damage buff for the target and energy regen. Super fantastic. Other than that, some other things that you can use is, of course, a dance. Everyone likes a super imposition 5 dance, because you use out on a target, and then in all allies move faster, more movement is needed. Unlike Ranmei, you don't really need memories of the past or the free-to-play mashing cogs as much, because as mentioned, energy is not as critical for this particular character because he keeps using his skill. Unlike other characters who wants to use like skill basic, Sunday is just going to use like skill, which makes him very, very healthy for his overall energy usage. That's why he doesn't really need memories of the past too much, doesn't really need mashing cogs too much. You could run Planetary Rendezvous if you wanted more same type damage buffing, but I think what's really, really interesting to talk about is Past and Future is also decent, because you use skill, you buff. Similarly, if you're just looking for that damage buff, Carve the Moon with the Clouds is also decent. At the start of every turn, you either buff attack, you buff crit damage, or energy regen. Also very, very great. Unfortunately, it's a battle pass gear. Other than that, I don't really like too much of the other ones unless you're running some sort of niche build that you have. For example, you have like increases where it's out, not that significant for this one over here. Now let's talk mainly about the signature for Sunday and why this is like so good for him. So if you look at this overall skill, after the wearer uses a skill and ultimate on one ally character, the wearer regenerates 6 energy. This is nice, it just helps him get his refund better, and he always uses skill and out on an ally. But at the same time, the ability's target receives 1 stack of Heim, this buff that you get when you use skill or out, which you're always going to use on your target anyway. Stacks up to 3 times, and it goes up to 45% damage buff. For every 2 times you use skill or ultimate on an ally character, you recover 1 skill point. This is basically in 6 turns, you use 6 skills and 2 ultimates, 8 in total. You divide by 2, you get 4 skill points in 6 Sunday turns versus the free, quote-unquote, free Bronyer one, which is only 1 in every 6. 4 versus 1 skill point back, making him a very, very massive skill point funneler if you have his signature Lightcones so good. And unfortunately, I'll recommend it if you can pick it up, because it does change up his playstyle quite a bit. It does add a lot of utility to this particular character as of current time of recording too. The next thing, of course, now we have talked about Lightcones, we talked about his overall kit. More importantly is, how do you build this character? And for that, I want to go into the synthesis menu real quick over here. And for the 4-piece that you're looking for, I would highly recommend you go for the Sacredos Relived Ordeal. You could go for, of course, 4-piece the wind set as well if you wanted to have a bit more turn cycling, a bit more pushing. But why I really like this 4-piece Sacredos Relief Order is because you not only get speed 6%, but when you use skill or out on a target, which you basically will always do, you get crit damage buff of 18 lasting for 2 turns and stacks 2 times, which means you can go up to 36. This is really, really very nice. This is very synergetic with overall kit. I highly recommend you go for a 4-piece Sacredos Relief Order. And for the main stats, what am I looking for? I'll probably be going for speed for the boots so that he can cycle more, because he's skill point neutral or even positive. So the more times he acts, the more skill points you give to your team, the more buffing you're going for. So speed is great on this particular character. For the body, you want to go for crit damage, because he passes it over to the ally that he's buffing 30% of his own crit damage. So having him at 60% from like the main stats and stuff, you're basically giving like almost close to 20% over the target, which is great. So you want to go for that crit damage for the body. Hands and hit, I'll talk to you about it in the rest of the substats generally, but for the 2-piece is where it gets a little bit more varied. Personally, I like Lushaka Sunken Seas a bit more. Some of you might be looking Wondrous Banan Amusement. This 16% crit damage, only 30% of it is passed over, which is roughly around 4% crit damage, which is 1 roll of crit damage. On the other hand, Lushaka gives you 12% attack, which is close to 2 rolls versus like less than 1 roll or like half a roll of crit damage for the Wondrous Banan Amusement part, which is why I really like Lushaka. On top of giving like 2 rolls of attack, you also at the same time give yourself 5% energy regen, which is fantastic. You can also control this very easily because it's just positioning, which you do at the start of the battle. So this is really great. I like 2-piece Lushaka and 4-piece of the speed set. And for the main stats of this, I will go for a HP or defense percentage for the Planisphere. This just gives him a bit more chunk. He doesn't really need too much damage. He doesn't need any other stats. Helps him survive more, pushing that 4k, 5k HP. I think is really healthy. And for the Link Rope over here, I'll definitely be going for energy regen. It just helps you finish off that when you use a skill, you'll be able to complete the rotations much better as well, because he's using like 3 skills, and that's 90. The more energy regen you have, you multiply on top of that as well. So really, really strong for Sunday in terms of these. For substats, crit damage, speed is what I'm focusing on. If you can get anything else like HP, defense percentage is also great, but speed and crit damage is the one that I'm really focusing on for Sunday overall. Now that we talked about a lot of them, let's talk about Eidolons, and then we'll wrap it up with key teammates and what we have discovered as we are playing him. Out of all the Eidolons, I think his S1 is really much more attractive than his Eidolons, because these are just like additional buff, but the S1 really changes up his playstyle. This is tremendously good value, as we talked about in the Lightcone section already. But for Eidolons, E1 is great. It's really doubling down on the fact that he's a summon buffer, and this one ignores enemy defense, but at the same time, on top of that, you ignore 40% more of the enemy's damage dealt to enemies that lasts to 2 turns if it's a summon. So he doubles down as like probably the best in class summons buffer by far, with this massive 40% defense ignore the summon does. He does push them out with skill very often, so they act very, very often, and they last 2 turns too. E2 is nice, but not super critical. This gives you even more skill points immediately, especially if you had to use a skill in the first place in order to get that first ultimate when the battle begins. So this is really very nice. It helps you get straight away skill point positive, and at the same time, the damage increased by 30%. This is quite nice. For any of you like 1 turn cyclers, this is like quite decent to have. E4, when the turn starts, regenerate 8 energy. This is also okay. It does allow you to switch out from energy regen to something else that you might want to look for. But again, I don't think it's super critical. This is just a segue into like E6, which is really nice because his talent crit rate boost effect becomes stackable up to 3 times. Each time he casts, his crit rate is 20% by the way, so stackable 3 times is 60%. Talent duration is increased by 1 turn, and when Sunday uses it out, can also apply the talent crit rate boost to the target, which is crazy. So you're buffing both crit rate, crit damage, and when the talent's crit rate boost takes effect and the target's crit rate exceeds 100%. This is ridiculous. It's the first time I've seen this in the game. Every 1% of excess crit rate increases crit damage by 2%. This is the first time I've seen this, and it's the overspill converted to crit damage. This is insane, which means you can just slap on like crit rate gear. If you have really good crit rate ratios, every excess is going to just convert over the crit damage anyway. I think this is really nice. This is a super interesting talent that he has. This is crazy. Lasting for 2 turns when you use the skill for crit rate, and this is just ridiculous at this point. So his E6 really does change the games, especially if you're looking for overspill. But again, it is going to cost you like $1,000 or at least a couple more years. So we'll see how that goes. Last but not least, of course, if you're finding value in this video so far, do consider liking, subscribing for more such future content. You'll really help the channel grow and reach out to more people too. Now, one of the main problems, especially when playing with hungry hyper carries like Jingyuan, is skill points. Although Sunday does give some sort of skill points, I found it very, very comfortable if I had Sparkle in the team to give a lot more skill points so that the healer as well as Jingyuan himself can start to use up a lot more. So he himself is not too bothered by skill points Sunday, whereas the main DPS that he buffs tends to be quite hungry for skill points. Most of the hyper carries like to use their skill points a lot, which is why a character like Sparkle is really strong. Characters like Ho is also really great because you can give more energy to the rest of the team to help your hyper carry act a lot faster as well. I do like her quite a bit. You get a lot of attack too. But more importantly, if you are doing the synergy of skill points and you don't have a character like Sparkle, characters like Lingsha, characters for example like Luota, these are great characters also because they give you a lot of skill points as their healing isn't involved in when they use their skill. It comes like all around their kit, not just when they use their skill. So these 2 units are really excellent for the healing slot. Sparkle is of course really great, but any other Harmony characters that also buff skill points or give some sort of positive to skill points will be great here. And for the teammates, Jingyuan is a hyper carry currently in the game that's recommended, but in future we'll have more remembrance characters. All the units will be really great too. But I do think that there are other ways to play this particular unit Sunday in many other team compositions, which I think you might find this video where we expand on the permutations and combinations a bit more in depth here. But if you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, check out these 2 other videos, and thank you again so much for watching. See you in the next video.